in School, Beatport's new producer competition. If you win, you get 1 year support from the biggest and best in the industry, artist management and development by one of Beatport's top labels, direct access to the world's leading hardware, and so much more. You got what it takes? Learn more at beatport.com/beatsinschool.
Hi, I'm John Watson, producer and instructor at Point Blank. For this first instalment, we're going to show you how to make a track for the Circus Recordings competition using a single sound pack from Beatport Sounds. For this project, I'll be using Ableton Live and using just sounds and loops from the Analog Tech House Volume 1 sample pack from Engineering Samples Red. If you're not already using Ableton, you can download the demo with a full 30-day trial to get you started. So I've got an empty Ableton project here, and I'm going to open up the sidebar and just talk about the locations of where we can install this. So first off, I've got it here on John's docs, and I've got it within a Point Blank folder on my desktop. Just dragged and dropped it there, and it will show up automatically. The other way to do this is to actually manually add a folder from a location. So I've got it here again on my desktop, and what I can do is just click open, and then from within Ableton, every time I open it, this sample pack will now appear. So from within the sample pack itself, you can see that I've got 5 kits here. So let's open one of these up and have a listen. So I've got some 909 hi-hats there, and you'll notice that there's often a couple of versions of individual sounds. So I've got the hi-hats here, and then I've got a wet version. So I've got dry and wet. Wet meaning they've added some reverb to the sound. Some chords here, chords wet, for example, so the same thing going on. Basses, claps, and you can see that within this folder all the samples automatically play at 125 beats per minute. So it's worth setting the tempo of your project to 125, or indeed if you were using one of the other folders here, I've got 128 beats per minute, 126 and so on. So let's have a look at this kit here at 128 beats per minute. Now the building blocks of a track, obviously the drums, the bass, the kick and the other instruments. So you can see it's kind of categorized to give you a mixture of all of those different sounds. So you've got here, for example, some sub bass loops, percussion, kicks, and these loops are all set so that you can stack them together to make a little sequence. Now what we've also got here are one shots. These are individual sounds here, individual stabs, and these can be used with things like samplers, another instrument, to kind of create your own patterns. So you've got here some music hits and then percussion. So for example, you can use a sampler here and you can create your own drum kits here, snares, kicks. Lastly, tape-driven loops. So these are drum loops and percussion loops that have been driven through analog tape. So we've got a nice kind of crunchy texture to these. So let's come in and grab a kick. So let's just drag this in, and yeah, automatically now you can see that the tempo, which was 128, has automatically come down to 125 beats per minute because the samples automatically warp. Okay, so if I was to take it back up to its original BPM, 128, it'll then easily play back at that tempo. And this is really useful because let's say I was in a kit here, 126 beats per minute. It means I can grab, say, this bass, pop it on with my kick, and automatically the two are going to sync. I can also do things like add either the simpler or the sampler in Ableton's instruments, and I can drag over some of the individual sounds. So I'm in the one-shot hits now, and we've got some individual hits there which we can now play on our controller keyboard. Just finding some hi-hats here. It's kind of cool. I want sort of more of a kind of top loop style drums here. So this is a full drum loop, and then underneath it is a top loop, which means that we don't have a kick. Quite like these ones here. Okay, so I created a project here at 125 beats per minute, and then just imported some of the loops straight into Ableton. So we all know it's a very simple and straightforward thing to do. So I've got a top loop here that I just dragged straight in. We've got a little noise hat thing going on here, which is really nice actually, because we get a kind of closed open hat feel, and then a kick. Now, thinking about that kick, I actually want something that's less processed. I want something that's fairly dry, so that I can process it in my own way. So what I'm going to do is get rid of that kick there, and then I'm going to come into the project folder. Let's go into kit 2. There was one I was looking at a little bit earlier. Here we go. This one here, off kick. Let me just turn the volume up. So this one here. So I'm going to drag this in. And at the minute it's on an off beat. If I zoom in a little bit, I'm just going to adjust my grid actually here as well. Let's just change over to 8ths. I'm just going to basically loop around one kick and just take this out of the actual loop itself, like so. Let's just trim this back, and then what we'll do is we'll just duplicate this across, get rid of these. I'm going to just consolidate this down using Command J. Turn the clip up a little bit as well, just to get a bit more volume. And then what we can do is we can paste this straight across our project. Now, I'm a sucker for a melody, and obviously with sample packs there's going to be some little musical elements that you can add, but I think it's quite good to, you know, take samples, take inspiration and create your own melodies. So within this sample pack here, I've got one shot. So I'm going to come in here to synth hits, and what I can do is load up some of these hits into a sampler. So let's have a listen. This one I quite like. It's got some quite nice harmonics in there. They're very short. So the first job is to grab myself a simpler. I've got a MIDI track here. Just double click the simpler instrument and then come back to the samples folder here. So always make sure that you've installed the samples correctly into a location, your hard drive or wherever, so you can access them. So let's drag this down on here like so. Let's just hit arm record, and then there's our little synth hit that we can make a little melody line with. You'll notice though that especially if I play a low key, there's a little bit of lag, and you can see in the sample window that there's a little bit of a gap at the start. So I'm just going to move this in, just play my keyboard just like so, and also something sort of slightly elongated about the sound, and then it sort of ends very abruptly. I'm going to take sustain off. I'm going to use release and just a bit of decay. So just give it a little bit of a better shape. So to help me with the melody line, what I'm going to use is Max for Live's ARP device that comes with Suite. So let's come on to Max for Live. Here it is, and automatically the way it's set up, got division set over 1/16. We should get a nice arpeggiated sound. So So I've got a little something here that I'd like to pop in. I'm just going to have a little sort of toy around with it really. I'd just like to do this, just set up some record time and just kind of jam with it and see what you come up with. Okay, so yeah, I'm fairly happy with that. I can obviously tweak this as much as I want. So I'm going to do Command A and Command U just to quantize it. And obviously, if the notes aren't actually on the grid with the arpeggiator, it's going to start giving out some sort of crazy time. So keep it nice and quantized. Now, what we can do is we can play around here with the way the arpeggiator plays the notes. So we can go up and down, for example. We can start to kind of chip in and play around with some of the notes. Let me duplicate that across. So here we can also add some swing as well. You'll notice that actually our top loop has got some swing in there, so it's worth doing that to the melody as well. So I've had a little play around with that and just come up with something that I feel just has a little bit of a better groove to it. And what I've loaded up is the little primal tap. This was free a couple of years ago for sort of like a couple of days or something, so I managed to get hold of it. Really nice little setting here is the springish, which I've just tweaked a little bit with a bit more feedback, which just adds a nice kind of analog feel, obviously in keeping with the sample pack. So I've added a few extra percussion lines, a little clave here as well. Nothing too heavy, fairly sparse. And then what I did here was I found this synth stabs here, and at first it doesn't really work with the track at all. In fact, if I put it back to its original tuning here, it doesn't work at all. So +6 semitones there. A little bit of the D tune as well, just felt like it was slightly out of tune. So I'm over at the bass shots folder now, and I want to create a nice little sub bass to work with the arpeggiated sort of bass line we had earlier. Quite like in this sample here. I'm going to throw it in. Seems to trigger pretty well. So I might record this in. So after that, I chose from the same folder a nice little subby bass as well. And what I've done is I kind of called and response between the two basses. So again, fairly sparse, but it just kind of helps the melody along. So back to that kick. I chose a soft kick earlier on because I wanted to be able to process it. And one thing I like to do is to add some sub harmonics to it by using the BX sub filter, which I hope is still free. So I'm going to pop that on. You'll notice that sort of straight away levels are quite hot. I'm just going to watch this gain here because what I want to do is add some low end. Let's try extreme here. Type punch. Yeah, so what we don't want to do is hit the red really. We want to really add sub but not really volume. So I think that's doing quite a good job there. Let's hear this in the track. So some compression on the kick, just to strengthen it up a bit more. And the other thing I did was to add this little ambience pad, which I had to tune up 4 semitones to get it to actually fit, just using my ears. And with that, a bandpass filter and some sidechain compression as well. So I think that's kind of done for this little sketch.